In this lecture, we'll look at querying databases with Pandas. Okay, we'll create a database and then we'll use Pandas to connect to our database and present the result in data frame. We'll try to answer the following questions. We'll see how to select only a few columns. We'll see how we can limit the number of rows we are retrieving. We'll see how to filter rows with the where statement. Then we'll see how we can filter multiple values in a column with where and in. We'll also see how we can filter values in a column with where, in, and order by statements. And finally, we'll see how to find out unique values in a column with the distinct statement, and we'll query using count and group by. Okay, I have imported Pandas as PD. Let's import SQLite 3, and then I just created a database. So to save some time, I made this before the lecture. So db is equal to SQLite 3.connect and then student list.database. And then I created a table called student info, and it has the following columns. It has ID, name, score, grade, and state. It has about 20 rows. Then finally db.commit. So this will be our sample database, and we'll try to grab various information from this database using Pandas. So let's run our database and see the result. So we have our results db.execute, select star from student info and order by ID. Let's print out our result. So we have about 20 students. What we'll do next is use Pandas to connect with our SQLite database and present the information in a data frame. So for that, we'll create a connection object. And the first thing we'll do is connect to this database. So we'll do the same thing. SQLite 3.connect student list.database. So let's do that. SQLite 3.connect, and then we'll pass our student list database .db, and I'm saving this in a variable called con. And then Pandas has a method called read SQL query, and we'll use that to make a connection with our database table, and then grab the information and retrieve it and present it on a data frame. Let's do that. So pd dot, the method is called read SQL query, read underscore SQL underscore query. Then we use the statement select all. So select all, select star from our table name, which is student info, and then we pass our connection object, and we save this, let's say, in a variable called data frame. Now we can display our data frame. So this is our data frame. So we connected to our database, and then we converted and retrieved the information and presented it in a data frame. Okay, simple, right? And we can say data frame dot head, and that will display the top 5 rows. Now let's start to answer these questions. The first question is selecting just a few columns. So we'll be using Pandas to answer all those questions. So to do that, we say pd pandas, then we have our read SQL query method. Let's say we want to select the ID, name, and score columns, those 3. So we can say select ID, name, score from name of our table, student info. So we pass everything as a string, and then it takes another attribute. So this read SQL query takes our connection attribute. So we pass that connect, our connection object, and let's save this in a variable called data frame. Now we can simply call our data frame object that head. So we only have the first 3 columns, right? Select ID, name, and score. Similarly, we can pass, if I want to grab, let's say, only score and state, I can pass select score and state from student info from this table, and then we pass our connection object. So data frame dot head, run it. Now we have our score and state. Great. Let's move to the next question. Now let's see how we can limit the number of rows which are retrieved. So we'll use the read SQL query method, and then we'll pass, once we select the columns that we want to present, we'll also use the limit statement to limit the number of rows that are retrieved. Let me show you what I mean. So we'll store it in a variable called data frame. Then we'll use pandas read SQL query method, read SQL query, and then let's select ID, name, and score. So select ID, name, and score from our student info table, and then we pass, let's say if we want to grab the first 7 rows, so we're trying to limit the number of rows that are retrieved. So limit 7, we pass that, and then we pass our connection object. Now let's see our data frame. So dframe, and then run it. See, now the number of rows that are retrieved are only 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's how we can limit the number of rows by using this limit statement. So that's the same as saying data frame dot head and then passing 7, right? If we do that, we get the same result. So that's the same as that. And you can change this to, let's say, 3. And we get only 3 rows are retrieved. Great. Let's move on to the next question, which is how can we filter rows with the where statement? Let me copy it, paste it here. So let me go back to my data frame. So we have our data frame. Let's say we want to select ID, name, and score from our database, from our data frame. And we want to grab only for grade 11 students. So I want to display the ID, name, and score of students that are in grade 11 or juniors in high school. Let's see how we can do that. So we have our data frame is equal to pd.read SQL query. Then we say select ID, name, score from our student info table where grade is equal to 11. Then we pass our connection object. So we'll be selecting the ID, name, and score from our student info table where grade is equal to 11. So it will only display juniors. So if you call our data frame, so we only have 2 juniors in our table. So those are John and Lucy. And we displayed ID, name, score. If we want, we can just select all, and that will display all the rows, all the columns. So select star. In this case, we get ID, name, score, grade, and state. And we have specified where grade is equal to 11. If we try a different grade, let's say 8 for instance, we have 3 students. That's how we can use the where statement to filter rows. Let's move on. Next, let's see how we can filter multiple values in a column using where and in statements. Let me copy that, paste it here. So we have our data frame is equal to pd.read underscore SQL query, and then let's say we want to grab student all the columns where state is in Maryland, Arizona, and South Carolina, for example. Okay, so we can say select star. We'll be grabbing everything, so select all from our student info table where, and then we have our state, where state in, we want the states in whatever state that we want. Let's say MD Arizona, and then South Carolina. Then we'll pass our connection object. So select all from our student info table where state is in Maryland, Arizona, or South Carolina. So it will display students in those 3 states. Let's call our data frame and run it. So here we have a list of students in Arizona, Maryland, and South Carolina. That's how we can use the where and in statements. Next, let's see how we can use the where and in statement to retrieve students that are in specific grades. Let's do that. So I'll copy this. So in this case, instead of state, we'll be grabbing students by grade. Let's say where grade is in, let's say grade 8, 11, and 12. So in this case, it will grab students which are in grade 8, 11, and 12. Let's run it. So here we have retrieved all the students from our student info table who are in grades 8, 11, and 12. Good. Next, let's see how we can filter multiple values in a column with where and in, and then we'll use order by statement. So it's similar to what we did here, but instead we'll also be ordering. Ordering means, for instance, we'll order this so that it appears in ascending order. Let's do that. So let me just, to save some time, let me copy that, paste it here. So we have pd.read SQL query, select all from student info where grade is in 8, 11, and 12, and I'll pass the order statement, order by grade. Okay, let's run it. Now our result is order by grade, in ascending order, right? So 8, and then 11, and then 12. That's how we can use the order by statement. And let's check this out with states. So select all from student info where, let's say, state in MD, let's say South Carolina, New York, and Arizona, and let's order them by state. Then we pass our connection object. Let's run it. So here the states are ordered in ascending order alphabetically, right? Arizona, and then Maryland, followed by New York and South Carolina. Good. Next, let's see how we can find the unique values in a column with distinct statement. Let me copy that, paste it here. Let's try to find out all the distinct states in our data frame. So we have so many states. So we have California, New York, San Francisco, LA, Virginia, DC, and so on. And some of the states are duplicate. For instance, we saw here that we have 2 Arizona, 2 Maryland, and we might have some more duplicates. So let's try to find out all the unique states. Let's do that. So we'll save it in a variable called data frame, and then we have pd.read SQL query, and then we'll select select distinct state from our student info table, student info. Then we pass our connection object. Then we call our data frame. So this will select all the distinct states. Let's run it. So we have 16 distinct states. So California, New York, San Francisco, LA, Virginia, and so on. So those are all distinct states. That means the other 4 are duplicates. And if we want, we can use the order by statement to arrange this alphabetically. So we can say order by state. See, now we have ordered the states alphabetically. You see how you can combine different statements to grab information? Now let's see the distinct grades. Okay, I'll just copy this. Select distinct grade from student info. Let's first check it without ordering. Okay, we have 10 distinct grades, 11 distinct grades. So grade 11, 12, 10, 9, and so on. That's how we can use a distinct statement. And let's order it by grade. So we have grades 2 through 12. Good. And let's see how we can query value counts with the count and group by method statement. Let's say we want to find out the states that we have, all the different states, and count the number of students in those states. How can we do it? Let's see that. So we have our data frame, pd.read underscore SQL underscore query, and then we select our state first, and then we pass count star. So we'll be counting as what do we want to count? We want to count our number of students, right? From our student info table, and then we pass our connection object. So what this will do is display the states that we have and then the number of students in those states. So it will count the number of students in each state and display it. Oh, and let's not forget to group them by state, otherwise we'll get like all the number of students as 20. It will display one state and 20. So we need to group it by state. Now let's call our data frame. Good. So here we see state and number of students. So from Arizona, we have 2 students. From California, we have 1 student. From Maryland, we have 2 students. From Massachusetts, we have 1. From Virginia, we have 1. So this is, we grouped it by states, and it goes by ascending, right? Great. So that's how we can use Pandas to connect to a database and retrieve some info and display the result in a data frame. So in summary, we saw how we could use Panda to connect to a database and then grab and retrieve information and display it in a data frame. And we saw how we could achieve certain functions using Panda. For instance, limiting the number of rows that we retrieve, filtering multiple values using where and in statements, order by statements. And we saw how we could find unique values in a column by